I don't know how I'm gonna come back from this, but I think I got a way. Gonna do some changes, right? We're gonna remove the engine arms, we're gonna remove a few things, we're gonna get this thing to sit a little bit better, we're gonna use the lift next time, bring it up from underneath and see exactly where those interferences are. Start trimming things as needed and then adding things back up until this thing sits exactly where I want it. And I mean, it's not far right now. If you can see, it's actually not too far. You know, in terms of like the engine clearance from the front, I mean, we got a radiator that's gonna sit here, maybe a puller fan if we can fit one, I really would like to. It's pinned up pretty far back against the firewall. The only interferences that I see here, there's an interference down there with the header down to the thrust arm. Oh jeez, it's a long day. The thrust arm mount on the body. And over here, there definitely is going to be an interference with the brake booster, which obviously I busted loose of its rubber grommet, so nothing was broken, it was just dislodged, so I need to figure out a way to get that to sit back where it belongs. As it stands right now, there is a direct interference between the booster and the cylinder head, and that is going to be a big problem that needs to be solved. So right now, as you can see, the engine is kind of sitting where it needs to be, but what else do we have to deal with? Let's take a look underneath the car and see what those interferences are going to be underneath. The interferences underneath are nothing to laugh at either. I mean, we got a lot of direct interferences. Not to mention, I'll get back to the transmission in a second, but this subframe, I tried turning it around and I realized I can't turn it around even though it would work kind of well. The lower control arm joints would just not match up to the suspension, so that's out. And so we're looking at a completely custom subframe with a relocated steering rack to the rear. Even if I went with a different oil pan, like a Holley 302-20 or a 302-22 lower profile oil pan, it's still going to have a direct interference. So that will be a problem. As you can see here, there is there's a rear sway bar that also gets mounted back here, and that's going to hit the TR6060 directly. So we have to figure something out with the front sway bar. This might actually end up becoming a swap very similar to what we saw with the E30 N54, where we ended up making a complete front subframe. We relocated the steering rack and we relocated the front sway bar using an E36 M3 sway bar. Let's take a look at the back at the transmission end, and you can see why that transmission is kind of still hanging a little bit low. It is pinched up against the tunnel, so that's not good. So I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm shocked that the LT1 doesn't fit directly into that. I kind of knew that it wouldn't. I knew that it would be just about as complex as my E31 S85 that had basically a front suspension redesign, front subframe redesign, going to a steering rack as opposed to sticking with the box. We're going to do all that here as well. It's going to be a lot of fabrication, but I'm telling you, I think it's going to be all worth it in the end. Take a quick look one more time. Okay, so this is basically where the transmission is going to sit. It's basically, well, the transmission, I'm going to have to widen the tunnel in a couple of areas, I think. This is, needs to be pinched up a little higher. It really does, because the mount down there below is just not going to fit. In fact, if I kind of move this a little bit. Okay, so you can see a little bit better there that there is a big hunk of a transmission bracket there. I am not going to be using that bracket. I'm going to be making a custom transmission bracket that's going to end up mating one to the other, and I'm going to see what I can do with that. But yeah, this transmission, a TR6060, is bigger than the T56 in the back, and as a result, has a direct interference to both the left and the right frame rail side of the transmission. So it's just not sitting all the way up where it could be. You can see right up in there how it can go higher, but it's not because the lower part is too wide. So we need to do something about that as well. need to relocate the oil pickup to the other side. No big deal there. It's right up there and it comes down to where the old location is. We'll just need to bring it down to the new location. You need to torque these two M6s to 106 inch-pounds. You need to torque the 14 of the M8s down to 18 foot-pounds, all 14 of them. And then there's two of these guys, one on the other side as well. This is an M10. You need to torque that down to 37 foot-pounds. So after we torque all these up, we're gonna be in good shape to start positioning the engine. What we need to do now is ensure that when we reinstall the engine that there are no interferences. Not like we had last time where we had tons of interferences between the frame rail, brake booster, the accessories, other things like that, all interfered. We need to make sure that all that stuff is removed so that we can sit the engine exactly where it needs to be this last time, get our motor mount brackets set up, and then make sure that we can then move the accessories around all that. So let's do the installation of the oil pan. Let's remove the brake booster, and let's remove all the accessories. Skipping ahead a couple of chapters in this boring book, we end up coming to an isolated engine, no harness, no accessories. Everything has basically been stripped out of this thing so that we can set this into the E24 engine bay appropriately. Let's take a quick look at the engine bay and talk about what we did there too. Looking below, you got everything basically removed from the driver's side, and that includes the Hydro Boost brake system, the ABS, the cruise control, and the steering mechanism is all been removed. Now we're gonna all rebuild this as we see fit. In fact, I don't even know if I want to go back with Hydro Boost. I might end up going with a brake booster, but I will tell you this, at the location of this brake pedal outlet, you can see right in there where it ends up going into the brake pedal, will need to be modified. It needs to move over basically like an inch to the right in order to clear the driver's side header. So we gotta make modifications there. So I do see modifications that need to be made there. We can now start to position the engine such that we can take the car and lower it down, affix the subframe, and then lift the whole thing up at once so that we can then really dial in as to the detailed engine position and start cutting up the subframe, installing the mounts and the brackets that get this thing living where it needs to live for the rest of its life. So I got the engine sitting really close to where I want it to live. I think it needs to get pushed a little bit further back, but I am doing it very slowly and slowly lowering the car onto the engine to observe any interferences that I come across as I'm bringing it down. So far as it stands right now, none, but I still need to bring the engine up, AKA the car down just another couple hairs. But I don't have any interferences on this side. I do need to trim the control arm bracket down there on the chassis side to interfere with the driver's side downpipe. And over here, I'm definitely gonna have some work to do and assess how I'm going to work on the brakes.